Hello everyone. Welcome to another video on AWS databases. My name is Miskana Gormley. I'm a senior database specialist solution architect at AWS. This is the second video in a multi-part series on Amazon RDS custom for SQL Server. In this video, we are going to walk through step by step on how you can create and connect to your Amazon RDS custom for SQL Server. Please check out upcoming videos on additional information and deep dives on RDS custom high availability, migration scenarios, and so on. All right, let's get started. Here is the agenda for this video. I'll be spending more time showing you a demo on setting up the environment, completing all the steps required in order to successfully create RDS custom for SQL Server instance. And I will then create RDS custom instance and show you how you can connect to it using RDP client. I will also show you how you can pause and resume automation, and then we'll see an example of a support parameter. If you are new to RDS custom, I highly encourage you to check out the first video in this series where I cover the technical overview and the use cases for RDS custom for SQL Server. Before we start creating an instance, let's talk about the steps required in order to create RDS custom for SQL Server. The first requirement is KMS. You must create a symmetric customer master key. The AWS managed key is not supported. If you have an existing KMS key in your account, you can use that to create RDS custom. Next, you need to have an IAM role and instance profile created as well. You need to provide this IAM role necessary permission to access KMS key, S3, and the other AWS services. You will then add this IAM role to your RDS custom instance profile. Next, you have to configure the VPC, making sure that RDS custom can communicate these other AWS services used in the RDS custom environment. These services include CloudWatch, S3, Systems Manager, and so on. We covered this in the previous video. If the RDS custom cannot reach any of these services, your instance creation will fail. Or if you already created your instance successfully and then it was running, and at some point for some reason RDS custom loses access to any of these services, your instance will go to the unsupported configuration. You can create and configure these required services manually, but the easiest way will be to use the CloudFormation template that's readily available in our documentation. I'll show you where those are and then how you can get that CloudFormation template. So that way you don't have to create and configure these required services manually. Once the required services are correctly configured, you can simply create the RDS custom instance. Once the instance is in available state, you can connect to your instance using an RDP client. So to connect to the database instance using RDP, the VPC security group must allow inbound traffic on port 3389. Also, the underlying Amazon EC2 instance will need to have the Windows firewall configured so it can allow a remote desktop access. We will use System Manager to run a command that will configure the firewall on the host for us. Let me get into a demo now to show you things in action. Okay, so if you go into the AWS documentation, in the RDS user guide, there is a section for RDS custom. So if you go to the SQL Server one and then to setting up your RDS custom for SQL Server environment. And in here, we want to go to the configuring with AWS CloudFormation section where you will be able to download the JSON file that is needed to set up the prerequisite for our demo instance. Save this into my download. And while that is downloading, here is the list of the resources that will be created by this CloudFormation template. I will encourage you to go through this so you can understand what the CloudFormation template is doing. Here is also the section guiding you step by step how you can create the CloudFormation stack using the JSON file. So let's go ahead and then create our CloudFormation stack. Here I am in the CloudFormation console. I'm going to go ahead and then create the stack. And I will choose the file I just downloaded. Okay, for the name, I want to use the same name in here. Just copy that and add demo. As you can see in here, here's the CIDR block for the VPC, and it is going to create two 7/8 as well. And you can see here the CIDR block for the 7/8. Feel free to modify this according to your requirement. I'm just going to accept the default for this demo. And I will accept all the default here as well. And I will acknowledge and click on create stack. And this can take about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to pause the video here and come back when it's ready. All right, our stack is ready. And if you go to the output section, you will see the resources created by this CloudFormation template. As you can see, here's the VPC named RDS Custom SQL Server Demo VPC. And there's also a security group that we can use or attach to our RDS custom instance. And then also a KMS key, an instance profile, and also a DB7 group created here. So once this CloudFormation template create the initial resources, there are few additional steps that you need to take in order to be able to connect to your RDS instance successfully. The first thing you will need is this VPC is only coming with two private subnets. So we need to have a public subnet where we can have Amazon EC2 instance or our jump server created, right? So we need to have public subnet. For the public subnet to work, the VPC need to have internet access. So therefore, we need to create internet gateway and attach it to this VPC created by our CloudFormation template. So I'm going to go through all of that steps so you know exactly what you need to do in order to have your test environment running. Then the other thing is there is a security group created by this CloudFormation template. However, if you look into the security group, there is no rule currently defined. So therefore, we need to add a rule for RDP access so you can connect to it from the jump server. The other rule is for SQL Server port 1433. And the other change I need to make is in the network ACL. The network ACL currently is very restrictive, and we need to modify that in order to allow the inbound and outbound connection to the private subnet. So that way I can connect to that RDS instance. And one other thing I need to create will be an EC2 instance that I can use as a jump server. And I'm going to deploy that EC2 instance in the public subnet that I will be creating. So those are the additional steps that I need to complete. And let's get started. So the first step is going to VPC. And I will go to Internet Gateway, and I'm going to create Internet Gateway. I'm going to name this IGW RDS Custom Demo. That's all I need. I'll create the Internet Gateway now. Next, I need to attach this to the VPC. So I'll click on Attach to VPC. This is our VPC. And click on Attach Internet Gateway. Okay, that is created and then attached. Next, I need to create the subnet. So from the subnets, I will click on Create Subnet and select the VPC. That will be our RDS Custom Demo VPC. And for the subnet name, I will call this RDS Custom Public Subnet. Then for the CIDR block for this subnet, I will give it 10.0.112.0/20 is sufficient. Okay, that's all I need to provide. I'll click on Create Subnet. All right, go to the route table and click on the route table ID. Then if you look into the routes, currently only the local route is there by default. So I'm gonna edit the route, click on add route, and this is gonna be for the internet access. And I will select internet gateway, then pick the one that is attached to our VPC and click on save changes. That is all for the routes. So now here is a route to the internet. Next, I need to modify the network ACL that's associated to the private subnets. I'm going to search for custom again. And the first one is the one that's associated with my public subnet. I want to modify the second one, which is currently associated with two private subnets. If you go to the inbound rule, you will notice that this is very much restrictive, and then it's only allowing a certain port ranges here. I'm going to modify both inbound as well as the outbound rules. So because this is my demo environment, I'm going to open it wide. Please don't do that on your environment. Be intentional if you have to modify the network ACL in your environment. So I'm going to edit the inbound rules. And I'll delete this first one and allow all traffic and save the changes. And if I go now, as you can see, it's wide open. And I'll do the same for outbound rules. And again, allow and save the changes. So now I have modified both inbound and outbound rule to be wide open. Next, I need to create a security group that I can attach to the Bastion host I will be creating. So let me go to the security groups and click on create security group. And I'm going to name this RDS custom security group for RDP access, and select the VPC and add a rule. And this is going to be RDP rule, so I'm going to be explicit there, and I'm going to open it wide open again because I want to be able to RDP into this Bastion host. Okay, that's all I need here, and click on create security group. And one last step before creating our instance is I need to look into the other security group that was created by the CloudFormation template. I will search for custom, and it is the RDS custom instance security group. As you can see, there is no inbound rules there. So I need to edit inbound rules, and I'm going to add a rule. And first I want to add the RDP. And this time I'm not going to open it wide to internet, okay? That's because I'm going to be accessing the RDS custom EC2 instance as well as the SQL Server instance from my Jump server. So the source for this rule must be the security group that I just created in the previous step. And it is this first one. And I will add another rule for SQL Server, and then the same thing. Okay, and then save rule. So there were a few additional steps that I need to take before I can start the creation. That is all I need in order to create and connect my RDS instance. So I'm going to go to the RDS console now. As you can see, there is no RDS instance in my environment right now. I'm going to click on create database and select the Microsoft SQL Server, then Amazon RDS custom, and I will go with Enterprise Edition. And then you will notice that the only version supported right now is SQL Server 2019. And for the name, I will say RDS custom SQL Server demo. And just like RDS, you still need to provide password for the master user account. Okay. Okay, and I'm good with M5 extra large. And then I will accept the default for the storage as well. 100 gig is enough. And for the VPC, I need to make sure I selected the RDS custom VPC that was created by the CloudFormation template. Okay, and then this is also the DB7A group created by the template. And for public access, I'm going to say no, because I'm going to access this environment only from my JUMP server. I'll delete the default and select the RDS custom instance SG, which is the one we just modified. And for availability zone, it doesn't matter, but I'll go with A. And I'm going to accept the default port here. And for the IAM instance profile, so this is where it's different than the regular RDS for SQL Server. I need to select the instance profile created by the CloudFormation template. And that is RDS Custom SQL Server Demo US West 2. And then the same for KMS key. I need to select the one that was created by the template. And that's all I need to provide. And click on Create Database. Okay, my RDS custom instance is now being created, and this is going to take about 30 minutes or more. And I'm gonna pause the video in here and create a Bastion host in that public subnet, then come back and resume the video once the RDS custom instance is ready. As you can see here, 2 EC2 instances are currently being created. This first one is the resource name that is showing for the RDS custom instance. Right now it is showing the resource ID in here, but later on, once the RDS custom is completed, this is going to be updated with the correct name, which will have that do not delete prefix. The second one is the EC2 instance that the JUMP server I just created. So this will be the instance I will use to connect to the underlying EC2 instance hosting my RDS custom. So as you can see, the instance is almost ready. It is currently being backed up. So I can actually go ahead and start connecting to the JUMP server. And then from there, we can connect to the RDS custom EC2 instance. Okay, so let me connect. Okay, copying the DNS name. And the username is administrator. Okay, and then here's the password. Okay, I'm connected to my JUMP server at this point. This is a new EC2 instance I just created. I will have to download SQL Server Management Studio so I can connect to the RDS custom endpoint. From here, I could RDP into the RDS custom EC2 instance. Before that, there are a few more steps I need to follow. First one is grabbing the password for the EC2. I need to go to Secrets Manager to get the key pair information for my RDS custom instance. Here is do not delete prefixed resource. And I need to go to retrieve secret value. And I need to use this to decrypt the password for the RDS custom EC2 instance. I need to configure the local firewall rule on that EC2 instance. So what I need to do is click on connect. And I'm gonna use the Sessions Manager to run a PowerShell command. So I have the session established to that EC2 now. I need to go back to the documentation and grab the command I need to run. And you can find that in the creating and connecting to RDS custom instance. If I scroll down, here is the command I need to run in Sessions Manager. copy that into my clipboard. And all I need to do is just execute that same command, no modification is required. Okay, so now the local firewall is configured. The next step is now to retrieve the password. And here I already have that secret value. I need to copy the entire key content. And paste that in here and decrypt the password. Okay, here is the password. So my RDS custom instance is in a private subnet. So I have the private IP only for that. Copy that and paste it in there. And the username is again administrator. And click on connect. And now I can go ahead and then bring the password and paste that in. And here I am connected to the EC2 instance that is hosting my RDS custom instance. And now the next step is to test the SQL Server connection from Management Studio on my JUMP server. You may notice that the RDS custom console is very much the same as a regular RDS. If you've used RDS before, this should look very familiar to you. There are a few differences, mainly in here. You will see the RDS custom has the automation mode that will show in here. By default, when a new instance is created, RDS custom will have full automation, and that's what you're seeing in here. And if this was changed, you will see the current status reflecting in here. Besides that, the monitoring, logs, and configuration, all of these pages look very similar to the RDS. So I need to copy the RDS custom endpoint. And now I can go back to my version host. I'm going to paste the endpoint here. And I will provide the password that I typed in when I was creating the RDS custom instance. And that's it. I'm able to connect using Management Studio. This is my RDS custom demo instance. That's all I wanted to show you for the creating and connecting to RDS custom instance. Next, I want to show you how you can pause and resume the RDS custom automation mode. To change the automation mode, all you need to do will be just click on Modifies, and in the RDS custom database automation section, as you can see currently it's in full automation mode. To pause it, I can click on the pause, and the default is 60 minutes. That's actually the minimum. You can pause it up to 24 hours. So for now, I'll just accept the default, pause it for 1 hour. Click on continue and click on modify DB instance. And this is going to take a few minutes to change the automation mode. I'll pause the video here and come back. Okay, the automation is now paused. If you look into the summary, you will see that the automation is currently paused and it will resume in 57 minutes in my example. At that point, when this time runs out, the RDS custom will automatically resume in full automation mode. I have the option to wait the 57 minutes and have the RDS custom automatically change the automation mode to the full automation mode. Or optionally, I can go back to the instance and modify it, then change that to full automation mode. Okay, the instance is now available again, and then it is in full automation mode, as you can see here. That's all for this part again. Now let's go ahead and then see an example of the support parameter. Like I mentioned in the previous video, the RDS custom support parameter monitors your environment and take corrective action when possible. And when it's possible, it will automatically take corrective actions. But in cases where it's not able to recover, then it will put your RDS custom instance into unsupported configuration. We're going to see an example of both scenarios. First, let's see how RDS custom corrects problem when it detects. To initiate that, I want to go to the RDS custom instance, to go to services. And I've already discussed about some of the agents that are running in your RDS custom instance. So one of those agents is RDS custom agent, which is currently running. I wanted to go ahead and then stop this agent. So the RDS custom monitoring is going to detect that and it will restart the service. So it's not going to cause any issue to RDS custom instance. Okay, it's now in a stop mode. And then if I go back to my RDS custom, I won't see any issue because of my action right there. If I go back to my RDS custom console, I can see that the instance is still available. But if I go to the RDS custom logs and events, I will see a new entry logged in there telling me that the RDS custom automation has found an issue and then it took a corrective action. Here is a message telling you that RDS custom is performing a corrective action to recover the RDS custom agent on your instance. And then during this time, the instance is still unaffected. The status is always show as available. So that's one of the example I wanted to show you, that RDS custom automation is able to take corrective action when it can. The second scenario I wanted to show you is manually stopping the EC2 instance that is hosting my RDS custom instance. That is definitely not a supported action. So that will put my RDS custom instance into unsupported configuration. Let's go ahead and then see that. And here is my do not delete RDS custom instance. And I'm going to go to instance state and stop the instance. And this is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to pause the video here and come back when the status is changed. Here, as you can see, the status is now changed to unsupported configuration. At this point, RDS custom is unable to take corrective action, and the instance is going to remain in this state until I fix the issue. I can go to the instance, logs and events, and then see the information about the problem. As you can see, the RDS custom instance is going out of parameter because the unsupported configuration was used on the EC2 instance, which is I stopped the EC2 instance, right? That's not a supported configuration. And to bring back your instance into the available state, you have to find out what the problem is and then resolve that. In my case, I'm going to go back to my EC2 dashboard, and currently the instance is in a stopped state. I need to start this, then that should automatically resolve my issue on this specific example. In a few minutes, the instance is now back to available state. And that's all for this demo. Thank you for watching this video. Please check out upcoming videos to learn more.